today we are about to discuss about the emergence of sociology, and this emergence of sociology, as we try to see, it has to be seen in various facets, especially if we try to see that how sociology as a distinct discipline has appeared in India, and there are various undercurrents which are responsible for that. Like one thing which we try to see is that what were the social conditionings which has led to the emergence of sociology as a discipline. The second important thing which we can see is that how sociology has emerged as a discipline in various universities. And the third thing which we can see is who were the basic pioneers in sociology which has led to the emergence of sociology as a scientific discipline. And finally, we also try to see the trajectory of sociology which has developed through phases, especially we can divide it into two phases. One of course is sociology in India, and another of course is talking about sociology for India. Now, these are the two different ways in which we can see the trajectory of Indian sociology. And finally, we will also try to highlight that what were the various theoretical and the methodological issues which were involved with regard to development of sociology as a discipline. Now, talking about the first thing, that is the social conditioning of Indian sociology. Now, the important thing that comes out is that it indicates the various imprints of history and also the social forces which were operated in the society in general. So, basically it is a mix of the various historical processes and the social forces which were part of the Indian society. And if we try to see in terms of the categories of knowledge, we mean to say that there were various historical forces, social conditionings which were responsible for the emergence of discipline. Like if we try to speak about the various pioneers in sociology in general, we had Karl Marx, we have Max Weber, Emile Durkheim, Auguste Comte, and we try to see that how their works have been influenced by the various social conditionings that took place during that period of time. So, in the same way, when we try to speak about the Indian pioneers, I think they also have been influenced by, or sometimes they have also been influenced by the pioneers of the West, and in that way we try to see the changes which took place or the sort of adaptation which took place with regard to the growth of sociology as a discipline. We also try to see that how these things have been reflected in the various concepts, theories and the methods also. Especially we try to see that we have the Marxian model, but whether this Marxian model is going to be seen as it is or it is going to be seen in a modified way, or if we try to see the application of structural functional, can we see that structural functional in the same framework in Indian society as it was seen by the works of the Western scholars. So, we try to see that there is a closer relationship which has to be established between the social and the historical forces working in the Indian society. During the colonial period, many British and the European scholars on the Indian society, they were trying to speak about the Indian society, and sometimes we try to see Eurocentric explanations. That is, somewhere their understanding was being directed by or was being conditioned by the European trainings, and so they were not having the grasp of the Indian reality in totality, especially when we try to see it in terms of cognitive and the value terms. We also try to see that the studies which took place, they were abstract in nature, sometimes they were ahistorical in that sense as such. The concepts like tribe, the village, the community, the family, now they have to be defined in terms of the segmentary entities or in terms of the individualistic entities, but when we try to see it in the Indian context, we try to have those things in terms of organic linkage. So, I think that mismatch was somewhere flavoring the Indian society when it was been seen from the Eurocentric perspective. We also try to see the various British administrators who also had tried to work upon the understanding of the Indian society. Especially we try to find out that the processes or the problems which have been associated, these problems were those which they felt or which they wanted to reflect upon on the priority basis, but that may not be the need of the hour for the Indian society. So, in that sense we try to find out that even the British administrators, what they have tried to do, sometimes it may not be having the implications on the Indian society at that period of time. Then we also try to see the effect of, or maybe the efforts of, the so called missionaries. Now, missionaries, they try to see the Indian society, especially the Indian institutions like caste, the village and many other entities, in terms of the negative entities, or we try to see that the Indian institutions have been projected by them as something which are having the negative orders. So, they also wanted to reflect upon that sociology which will serve their purpose, rather than speak about the objectivity of understanding the Indian society. So, we have the Orientals. Orientals were the people who were being trained by the Europeans, or they had a training in the European world, and they tried to understand the East. So, by training they are having the European background, the European traditions, but when we try to see in terms of reality, we try to find out that they try to romanticize, they try to glamorize the understanding of the Indian society, especially when we try to see the issue of speaking about the village or speaking about the family, Indian family, or the issue of caste. I think they have been projected very differently. Sometimes the village has been seen as static, it was seen as ahistorical, and it was also seen as a village which is seen in an isolated framework. So, the projections have been differently managed or has been projected in that sense as such. So, in that way we try to find out that we have the effects of the so called social conditionings, which indicates the imprints of history and the social forces. We also try to see that the issues which took place by the earlier pioneers, somewhere their consciousness also was been governed by the history and the traditions. Especially we try to see that the nationalistic feeling, the issue of nationalism was on priority for many of the Indian scholars, and they try to see the understanding of the Indian society within that domain of nationalism in that sense as such. I think one famous work that we try to see, Erdési's contribution, that is the social background of Indian nationalism, where he is trying to project upon the nationalistic framework with regard to the Marxian understanding. So, we try to find out that these works had the reflections on the issues of nationalism in one way or the other. Now, these colonial understanding, the world view of the Western pioneers of sociology who has contributed to the discipline, and also we have the Indian pioneers who had to have the dialectical understandings, and along with that we also has the contribution of the various social reformers. Now, these social reformers also has something to do with the development or the understanding of sociology in general, especially if you try to see the pioneer Indian social reformers like Raja Ram Mohan Rai, or we try to speak about people like Ishwar Chand Vidyasagar, or we try to see the contribution of Dayanand Saraswati. Or many other people who try to understand the evils of Indian societies in their own way. So, the point that is to be raised is that these social reformers have also certain understanding about how the Indian societies has to be seen, or what can be the futuristic understanding about these institutions. Coming down to the issues of who were the basic pioneers of Indian sociology, I think we had certain names like B. N. Seal. B. N. Seal of course, can be seen as one of the pioneer. Along with that, we have people like B. K. Sarkar. We also have the contribution of Professor G. S. Ghurye, and we also have the people like Patrick Gates and along with that S. V. Ketkar. Then we also had K. P. Chattopadhyay, and other peoples like S. V. Ketkar and B. N. Dutt for that sake as such. Now, these were the pioneers who had given the direction to the understanding of Indian society. Now, when we try to see their contribution, their approach with regard to the understanding of the Indian society, I think somewhere they also has been attracted by, or they are also been guided by the nationalistic feeling in one way or the other, and somewhere they were trying to even challenge the legacy of colonialism, which has been established by the so called British administrators and the European scholars. Now, these pioneers, in view of the time and the social forces, were more Indian centered. They were self conscious Indians who were trying to have the structured way of looking to the Indian society in terms of a specific discipline, and also with the originality of the Indianness. So, that Indianness, the nationalistic feelings, and also the sort of a background, all these things were responsible for understanding their contribution in terms of building up sociology as a discipline. Now, the sociologists of the pioneers, especially pioneering generations, they were less concerned with professionalization of sociology, to be frank, and they were more interested in how this discipline can have the better social relevance. So, for them, making sociology as a distinct discipline, or maybe speaking about the professionalization of sociology, was not that important. Their concern was that how we can see the social relevance of the discipline in terms of understanding the problems of Indian society, in terms of diagnosing the Indian societies, in terms of how the sociology can take care of the issues related to the Indian masses in general. Now, these social conditionings which we are discussing at the different stages, along with the nationalistic ideology on the one hand, there was also the need to have certain amount of disciplining, especially with regard to the specific methodology that has to be used, or we can also see it in terms of the systematic pedagogy. Now, these were the important concern for looking to the sociology as a distinct disciplines. So, the end of the period of the pioneers immediately coincided with the various issues, especially the sociology which has developed in India and the sociology which was there in the West. It was visible in 1950s and 1960s that there is a need for the sociology as a specific discipline. People like Ramkrishna Mukherjee, were speaking about the call as, and they were seen as the modernizers of Indian sociology, who were trying to understand the sociology of India in a very different way, or in terms of the scientific rigor, in terms of the systematization of the discipline. Now, we try to see that sociology in the West, especially if we try to see the changeover which were taking place, there also we try to see that at the end of the Second World War, there was a gradual shift. The people, the academic domain in that sense, it has shifted from to USA in that sense as such from Europe. So, earlier the Europe has been the academic center, now people started looking towards the US, and the US was acting as one of an important academic domain in terms of serving the knowledge, in terms of understanding the distinct societies. In India too, we have the orientation which has also changed slightly, especially after independence. We try to see the influence of the American social anthropologist. We also try to see that there was an attempt to have the desired planned development and transformation of Indian society. Transformation of the Indian society. Now, these were the tasks which the sociology were facing at the various phases. Especially we try to have sociology which has adopted certain amount of social engineering, and it was also trying to see the social policy concerns which will be responsible for making the Indian society as the distinct society in terms of academic understanding as such. So, in that way these factors, these conditions, either we try to see it in terms of Americanization of Indian sociology, the influence of Americans in that sense as such, a shift which took place from Europe to the American domain in that sense as such, also has certain influence on making the Indian sociology in a different way. Now, when we try to see sociology as a discipline in various universities, I think we try to find out that there were various attempts which has been made, especially we try to see people like B. N. Seal. Now, B. N. Seal was trying to introduce sociology as a discipline in the Indian universities at the crucial period of time, especially we had his contribution in Calcutta University. But there if you try to see, there were also the emphasis upon looking to the ancient Hindus. There were also people like Radhakamal Mukherjee, people like B. N. Sarkar, who were equally contributing towards the development of sociology as a discipline. And in 1907, along with B. K. Sarkar and Radhakamal Mukherjee, we try to see that Calcutta University has certain edge to develop sociology, but one important thing in that sense is that Calcutta University cannot be rated to be the pioneer university in terms of the development of the discipline. Why? Because they could not develop sociology as a distinct discipline, and in that way if you try to see, the first department of sociology and civics that started in Bombay University. So, we have the Bombay University as the pioneer university, where we try to find out the emergence of sociology as a distinct discipline, and especially started in 1919 with the contribution of Sir Patrick Gates. So, Patrick Gates was responsible for bringing about the sociology and civic as a different discipline, a distinct discipline, where you have the empirical methods along with the philosophical orientations which has been developed in Bombay school. And along with that, we have people like G. S. Ghure, whom Patrick Gates had sent to UK for his work on caste, and later on when Ghure has came back as professor in sociology in Bombay University, and along with that Professor N. K. Tuthe was also the pioneer who has went along with Professor Ghure in establishing sociology as a discipline. So, we try to find out that the Bombay University has the pioneering efforts to develop sociology as a distinct discipline. Now, the important point which we have to see, along with that there were other parallel universities which we try to see in terms of schools, where we have the contribution of sociology as a discipline. Like in 1921, we had the Lucknow University. The Lucknow University can be seen as one of the important distinct university, where we have the discipline of sociology and economics. Now, this sociology and economics was started in 1921 at Lucknow universities, and the great professors during that period of time were Professor Radha Kamal Mukherjee, then we also have Professor D. P. Mukherjee, and along with that we have certain other colleagues like Professor A. K. Saran, and also we have Professor D. N. Majumdar. So, they were seen as the people, the sociologists who were trying to develop sociology as a distinct discipline in the framework of the academic orientation as well as the theoretical foundations. Now, we also have another parallel university, Mysore University. In Mysore University in 1928, we had the contribution by A. R. Wadia. A. R. Wadia had tried to understand and develop sociology as a different disciplines. Later on, the contribution of M. N. Srinivas also was seen as an important legendary with regard to the establishment of sociology as a discipline. Then in 1930, we have at the Deccan College, Pune, sociology which started under Professor Iravati Karve, and we also try to see at Osmania University in Hyderabad. Osmania University, Hyderabad in 1946, we had the contribution of people like Christoph von Hemmendorf, and later on we had a legendary figure, that is Professor S. C. Dubey, who had made a significant contribution at Osmania University at certain period of time. Along with these people, legendaries in the different parts of the country, either it is the Calcutta, it is the Bombay, it is the Lucknow, Mysore, or we have Osmania University and many other significant universities where sociology has emerged as a distinct discipline. The contribution of some other pioneers at the different period of time, or who can be named to have made significant contribution, are Professor K. M. Kapadia. Then we also have people like Professor M. N. Srinivas, and along with that A. R. Desai definitely is a legendary in that phase. And I. P. Desai. Then also we have people like M. S. Gore and also Y. M. Damle. Now, I think it is not that this is the only list of people who had made significant contribution as a pioneer in understanding the Indian sociology or in designing the Indian sociology at the initial phase of time, but their contribution had played a significant role in giving a distinct direction to the Indian sociology. Now, if you try to see another important aspect, that is the trajectory of sociology, that how sociology has moved in that sense as such. Now, here we try to have the understanding of sociology in terms of sociology in India. And as I said that we had sociology in India, then we have sociology for India also. And if you try to see the contributions with regard to that, we have people like Radha Kamal Mukherjee, whom we have named earlier. Then we have Professor D. P. Mukherjee, and also along with that we have Professor A. K. Saran, who tried to have made significant contribution with regard to sociology in India. Then we also have in 1950s a gradual shift which took place, where of course we try to see that how sociology has to move to a different domain. Especially this contribution started with the attempt by people like Louis Gamow and D. F. Pocock. Now, these two people had made a significant contribution, or one can say putting a different directionality to the sociology in India. Especially we had their contribution in terms of what we call as contribution to Indian sociology. And this contribution to Indian sociology, which right now also is seen in terms of a specific journal, I think this journal or the understanding of the various aspect of Indian sociology on a very different platform has been initiated by D. F. Pocock and Professor Louis Gamow, who tried to understand the Indian sociology in a new way. The early phases of the Indian society, especially we have the ontological and also we have the ontological and methodological assumptions, which were responsible for carrying forward the Indian sociology. Especially we try to see the contribution of Professor G. S. Ghure, or we have the people like Professor Radha Kamal Mukherjee. And along with that we had certain other orientation. So, on the one hand we have Indology, which has been developed by Professor G. S. Ghure at some period of time, and we also have the philosophical anthropology, which has been taken care by Professor Mukherjee. So, we had the two different domain, Indology and philosophical anthropology, at two different departures in that sense as such. Radha Kamal Mukherjee, who was trying to build up the sociology in terms of the universal categories, that is trying to make sociology, the Indian sociology in terms of a universal categories and the concepts. How we can see Indian sociology to be a universal sociology, and he tried to integrate the meta scientific and also the meta anthropological meta scientific and meta anthropological model, and which we try to see it in terms of the deductive understanding or the deductive reasoning. So, sociology in India has been guided on the one hand by the particularistic model on the one side, which has been seen with the contribution of Professor G. S. Ghure in terms of an Indology, and we also had on the other side the universalistic model, which was been talked about by people like Radha Kamal Mukherjee, who tried to build up a sociology at the global map. And both the people have their own orientations, and these different aspects have been taken care by the future sociologists. Especially we have the people like Professor F. G. Bele, T. N. Madan, or we have the contribution by J.P.S. O'Brien and also Yoginder Singh and Imtiaz Ahmad, who try to see Indian sociology in a new way. So, we had this particularistic and the universalistic debates at the different period of time, and which has been taken care by the different scholars in their own way, and they were trying to make the sociology as a distinct discipline. So, the initial sociology, which we said was seen to be having certain particularistic model, but on the other hand we also have the universalistic model, especially we have contribution by Professor D.P. Mukherjee, who tried to have the historical dialectical mode for analyzing the Indian society, historical dialectical mode for analyzing the Indian society, and we try to see that his contribution can be seen in terms of putting Marxian understanding and his contribution with regard to the understanding of Indian society. Now, we also try to have what B. D. Gupta said, that the Indology and the religio-philosophical issues had been the important concern, and these things have been taken up by people like Professor R. N. Saxena. Then we also have A. K. Saran and Y. B. Damle, who had adopted the religio-philosophical tone, and also they try to see the understanding which took place with regard to Indology and the religio-philosophical domain. So, the pre-independent India had these changes, and even the post-India independent India also had certain measures which have been taken up by these people in their own way. Now, along with that we also try to see, when I said earlier that there were sociology in India and sociology for India. Now, this distinction in terms of the academic debate, it basically started with the two seminars which were conducted at two different period of time, especially in 1960s, a seminar which was conducted in Agra, and it was basically for sociology in India. And along with that we had another seminar that was in Mount Abu, and this was basically for sociology for India. So, these two seminars were very crucial to see the trajectory of sociology which has grown through time. The issues were in these seminars were whether the sociology of India should be part of the global sociology, or it should be seen as the Indianness of the various concepts and categories, classifications, approaches and methods. So, are we going to have the contribution of sociology along with global sociology, or should we have the Indianness of the Indian sociology in terms of concepts, classifications, theories. Now, here the contribution of Indradev or his statement is going to be significant. He says that Indian sociology should be seen as a body of concept and generalizations. Which are applicable to the Indian society. I think this is a better understanding, that we try to see sociology whose contribution has to be seen in terms of how it is going to be applicable in the Indian society, especially the sociological principles which are derived from the Indian sources, and the study of the structure and processes in India are going to be seen as a significant issue. And in that way his statement appears to be more valid, because something which is going to be good for understanding Indian society from their sources are going to be the valid statements. Now, here Yoginder Singh, who says that the Indian society has to be seen in terms of changing historical political status of the country. I think this is again an important aspect, that we have to see the development of sociology in terms of the various historical and the political forces or the changes which took place in the country, especially the changing western intellectual contact, how we have shifted from western or the European model towards the American model, and later on to certain other issues in that sense as such. Similarly, the native intellectual traditions from where sociology has emerged, that again has to be seen in this context as such. So, Yugandhar Singh was very right when he was trying to see that sociology has to be seen in terms of the historical and the political changes of the Indian society. Now, we also have in the post independence India people who have been seen in terms of the specific models, especially we try to see the contribution of the people in terms of the specific framework. And I think this is going to be an important issue, because we can see that how Indian sociology has been carried in the different formats, especially in the post independent India. We have one model, that is the comparative historical approach, which has been carried by people like G. S. Ghure and K. M. Kapadia. Then we also had the contribution of certain other peoples, especially in terms of philosophical social approach. Philosophical social approach, where the contribution of Radha Kamal Mukherjee and D. P. Mukherjee appears to be significant. And also along with that, we have the logico-philosophical approach, where we have the contribution of a significant prop sociologist, Professor A. K. Saran. And along with that, the other approaches were the structural functional approach, where we have significant contribution by Professor S. C. Dubey, Professor M. N. Srinivas, D. N. Majumdar, and along with that McKim Marriott, so their contribution appears to be significant in the structural functional approach. We also had the statistical method approach, where we had significant contribution by people like Victor D'Souza, then Anil Bhatt, and also we have Ramakrishna Mukherjee. So, their contributions has been seen in the different framework, the philosophical sociological approach, logico-philosophical approach, structural functional approach, and also the statistical approach. So, these were the different approaches which has been dealt by the different scholars at different period of time, and in this way we try to see the designing of sociology, especially in terms of the theoretical understanding that took place. Now, what are the new trends where the sociology is moving? I think this is another important aspect that we have to see, that the new trends which took place, especially when we try to see the period in and around 1970s and onwards. Now, in that framework we try to see that the sociological studies have shifted from the continuum framework of analysis to the notion of degree, that how much things have changed in that sense. Then along with that, the Marxist historical method also has gained the momentum with the studies of agrarian structure, the working class, and many other issues. Similarly, the other schools, the other ways in which the Indian sociology has been dealt was the application of structuralism. Then we also have ethno-sociology, and along with that we had the system analysis, that is the social system analysis, and also we had the historical materialistic method and the new Marxian method. New Marxian method for understanding the society at the regional level and also at the macro level. So, we have the macro understanding by these different thoughts, these different ways of analyzing the Indian societies. So, I think one thing that we see is that the spectrum of understanding the Indian society has shifted drastically, especially when we try to see in 1970s. Now, we had in 1970s and 80s the establishment of certain institutions, especially we try to cover up the issues or the academic bodies. We had ICSSR, that is Indian Council of Social Science Research. We also had the UGC, University Grant Commission. We also have the ICHR, that is Indian Council of Historical Research, and we also had ICPR, that is Indian Council of Philosophical Research. So, these were the important national institutions which were also trying to develop sociology or the social sciences in general in the different ways, especially having the systematic and the scientific rigor with regard to the growth of the discipline. Now, we try to see that we had the new areas where the sociology has to be seen, like we have the sociology of development, we also had the sociology of education, we also have the sociology of health, and also we have the sociology of weaker section, which we try to see in more better way in terms of the subaltern schools, Now, these are not the other things in that sense as such. We had certain other school of thoughts, the different ways in which sociology has emerged, like we have sociology of environment, and also we had the sociology which can be seen in terms of their contribution in the science and technology, and also we had the shift which took place. Now, we even talk about the sociology and its contribution in terms of the so called biosciences, especially in the area of the biotechnology. Also, we had the understanding of the sociologist. So, I think if we try to see the whole discourse which is to be seen with regard to the emergence of sociology as a discipline, we try to find out that the various works, either it is the initial phase of development of sociology with the contribution of the sociology of stratification, the sociology of rural agrarian society, or the sociology of the urban society, or we have the sociology which was to be seen in terms of the understanding of the social structure, and now we are making a shift in that sense as such. Now, the rural and urban, they are not the only things which has to be seen. Now, we have to even have the microscopic or the micro analysis of these societies. Now, we try to see that the caste is being entered into the so called urban, or we try to see how the class has entered into the rural. So, I think the polarization which has been there, that caste is with rural and class is with the urban, now they are also mesmerizing, especially we try to see that how the things, the changes which took place. Now, we speak about the studies where the issue of ethnicity is going to be important as such, where the so called caste in the urban areas, the ghettoization of caste, or maybe speaking about the certain amount of regionalization within the city, these aspects are there in that sense as such, which we try to see are being seen in the urban framework. Similarly, we try to see the other issues where the rural is being projected in a different way. We have the issues of environmental sensitization. We also have the issues related to the impact of globalization on the rural society. We also try to see that how the modern technology is trying to influence upon, the ICT is influencing upon the rural society, and also we try to see that the rural society where we have the competitive classes. So, it is not the caste analysis, the caste structure and the mobility which is going to be an important issue. Rather, we try to see that the new horizons, the new domains are coming up in both the spheres in that sense as such. Now, the so called society which was being seen, especially the Indian society which was being seen into 3 substructures, especially we try to see we had the urban, rural and we have the tribal, and in these different categories, specific categories, we have in the urban the elites, we have in the rural the peasants, and in the tribals we have the tribes, the Adivasis. Now, these different categories which were seen as to some extent the isolated whole, especially the linkage between the rural and urban has been there, but the rural and the tribal was meager in that sense, or if you try to see the linkage between the urban and tribal, that was very less. So, now there is a drastic changes, the dynamics which are coming up in a very different way, and they try to see the whole world in a more cosmopolitan way, because now its urban is not the urban alone. We have even the external forces, especially the issue of globalization which is coming up, and they are trying to see the things in their own way. So, we try to see that there is bombardment of the various aspects of the various forces of changes, especially when we try to see the contributions, the new readings in that sense as such. We try to find out that even the external agencies like the World Bank, or we try to see the other international agencies like ILO, or maybe talking about the human development reports, they are trying to see the world in their own way. Especially now we have the issue of the diaspora, the Dalit diaspora, the Indian diaspora in that sense, the cultural diasporas which are coming up. We also try to see that the new arrangements are being made, the role of an agency, especially the gendered understanding of the society. Like we try to see that how we can locate their gender and their contribution with regard to the development of sociology also, because at some period of time we try to see that we did not have the sociology of gender, and we try to see the contribution of Sharmila Rege, who tried to build up that can we think about the sociology of gender, and then along with that we had certain other works. Similarly, if we try to speak about the issue of the sociology of environment, we have people like Ramchandra Guha, who is trying to understand the Indian society in a specific way, or we try to see the contribution of Gay Lomwet, who is trying to see that how we can speak about the subaltern, especially the contribution of David Hardiman and Ranjit Guha appears to be very significant with regard to the subaltern perspective. Then also we try to have certain other understanding. Veena Das earlier has talked about the issue of ethnosociology at some period of time, but now ethnosociology has not been carried forward by many new scholars in that sense as such. So, somewhere of course, we try to see similarly the contribution of Professor S. C. Dubey with regard to Kamar in terms of the specific ethnography. Now, these aspects are vanishing off in that sense as such. We try to see the significant contributions have been made, but these contributions has not been carried forward in a new way in that sense as such. So, I think somewhere when we try to see the emergence of sociology in the contemporary framework, either we try to speak about the industrial. Now, from industrial we have shifted towards the corporate in that sense as such. So, these changes of societies also has to be captured in a sociological way. So, I think the weakness and the strength of sociology has to be seen in terms of how the various forces of change are going to affect upon the societies, and how sociology as a discipline, as a craft, can capture the understanding in a scientific way. So, these are the important concerns that one has to see, and with regard to the specific contributions or the books, if you try to speak about, I think when we try to speak about the emergence of sociology as a distinct discipline, we try to find out that the initial contributions which were seen as the pioneers, especially in the field of sociology. I think one important contribution which we can rate or which we can see is the contribution by Professor T. N. Madan and his important work, that is pathways, that is approaches to the study of society in India. I think this is one good book which gives you the good insights about how sociology has developed, what were the contribution of the initial pioneers, and also the contribution in terms of the specific perspective. We also have a very significant contribution by Professor Yogendra Singh, and the legendary contribution is Indian sociology. And within that we have social conditioning and the emerging concern. Along with that, we have the contribution of Professor Yogesh Atal and Indian sociology from where to where, that is a significant contribution which speaks about the development of sociology through different phases of time. We also have the contribution by Professor Ramakrishna Mukherjee, Mukherjee's contribution, that is Sociology of Indian Society Sociology. Now, this is again an important reading. Sociology of Indian Sociology is an important contribution that one can read, and along with that we had the contribution by Professor Chikyomen and Parthanath Mukherjee, that is the Indian sociology reflections and retrospect. And also we had Professor T. K. Unithan and others edited book, that is Sociology for India. I think these are certain classics that we can see which can be thought of as the sort of readings for the readings with regard to this work. And along with that, I think another pioneering contribution can be seen by Professor D. N. Dhanagre, and the work of course is Indian sociology, perspectives on Indian sociology, where we had the ways in which the Indian sociology has been treated, has been developed in the historical framework. And apart from that, I think if you want to have certain specific readings on caste, on village, or maybe on urban, I think the special volumes are coming from Sage and from some other standard publications which are dealing with the specific areas of concern. So, with these contributions, I think we can have more better understanding about how sociology has emerged as a discipline. Now, within that we can see the initial phase where the Indological and the patristic way of looking to the Indian society was been there, or we can have the universalistic model which has been done by Professor Ramakrishna Mukherjee in terms of the philosophical issues, or we have the Indianness and the Western understanding by so called Professor D. P. Mukherjee, or we have the system analysis by Professor Y. M. Damle and many other contributions which can be seen as the pioneer contributions which has grounded the sociology at a very sound footing. And I think with these sound footings, the sociology has definitely emerged as one of the distinct discipline in social science proper for understanding the Indian society and the global society in general. So, I think with these words we can at least try to consolidate what we have discussed in this whole lecture, especially we try to speak about that what were the social conditionings with regard to the Indian sociology, where we try to speak about the contribution of the various forces, the imprints which have been there with regard to the history and the social forces, the role of nationalism, the role of British colonialism, or maybe speaking about the contribution which has been there from the western influence, and along with that the missionaries, the administrators, how they have contributed towards the understanding of Indian sociology. Then we also try to speak about the various ways in which the various universities where sociology had started, like we started with the Bombay School, which was seen as one of the pioneer universities where sociology had started as an academic discipline. And finally, we try to speak about the fact that this academic discipline along with Bombay School has been carried forward by to Calcutta, to Lucknow, Mysore, Osmania universities and many other places. Like we try to see that one of the latest and the recent department which started was been at Allahabad University, the Department of Sociology which started in 2010. So, I think still the sociology has not been established in many prominent universities, and one has to really see that sociology either it has been neglected, it has not been projected at the right period of time, and in that way we are having these crises which are still establishing. Now, we have the teaching of sociology in IITs, we have in IIMs also sociology. So, I think we try to see that emergence of sociology has now captured many new fronts in which we try to see its growth, and also we try to find out that the sort of trajectory in terms of theoretical and methodological issues are also the important concern that one has to see, and how it has moved starting from structural functional or trying to speak about the Marxian, and now we have the new domains of knowledge, the new perspectives which are coming up, the micro theories of the new school of thought, especially the neo functionalism, the new Marxism in that sense, as that even the postmodernism has also been seen as the new frameworks in which sociology is been seen in Indian society. So, I think these are certain issues that one has to really see and deal with when we try to speak about the emergence of sociology as a discipline in India in general, and trying to see it in the global framework in particular as such. So, with these words we will end up this lecture, and I think we can have many queries for the readings. So, you can just see go through these things as such. I try to have certain writings for you also. So, that will be of some use, and I think try to learn and teach sociology. The pedagogy of sociology definitely has to have an important role in establishing sociology as a distinct discipline. Thank you.